A ship may dock forever, but that doesn't mean it's empty. The Queen Mary stands still in Long Beach, California, massive, silent, and ancient. Once a grand ocean liner, now a luxury hotel, yet something about it never feels right. I checked in, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. Room B340. The most haunted cabin on the ship. I had heard the stories, voices in the dark, unseen hands pulling at blankets, figures standing at the foot of the bed. But I wasn't a believer. Not yet. The hallway to my room smelled like old wood and salt water. The kind of scent that sticks to your skin. As I unlocked the door, a strange feeling crept over me. The air inside was stale, thick, as if someone had been breathing in it for years without ever leaving. I tossed my bag on the bed, trying to shake the unease. Then a sound. Faint at first. Knock. It came from inside the wall. Slow. Rhythmic. I swallowed hard and turned, scanning the empty room. The walls were too solid for anything to be inside them. Knock. 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 The temperature dropped. The hairs on my arms stood up. And then, just as I was about to dismiss it, a voice. Right behind me. You shouldn't have come. I spun around, nothing. Just empty space. But my blankets, they were slowly sliding off the bed. Something unseen, something there was pulling them away. This was only the beginning. I yanked the blanket back onto the bed, my pulse hammering in my ears. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe I was already psyching myself out. I needed a distraction. Grabbing my phone, I started searching the history of Room B340. It didn't take long to find the stories. Guests reporting violent knocks in the middle of the night. Blankets being ripped off. The sensation of an unseen figure climbing into bed with them. Some had woken up with scratches on their bodies, deep, burning marks they swore weren't there before. And then, there was the worst part, the people who had spent the night alone and found strange photos on their phones the next morning. Photos they hadn't taken. I scoffed, locking my phone. Yeah, right, I muttered. But as soon as I turned the screen off, my stomach dropped. A new image was in my gallery. My hand trembled as I tapped on it. The photo was of me, lying in bed, sleeping. But someone else was in the room. A tall, shadowy figure stood at the foot of my bed, featureless, its head slightly tilted as if watching me. My throat went dry. I had just gotten here. There was no way I had fallen asleep. No way anyone had taken this. A sharp creak made me jolt. The bathroom door. It was opening. Slowly, painfully, steam poured out as if someone had just taken a burning hot shower. I hadn't touched the bathroom. I hadn't even been inside yet. The mirror was completely fogged up, but through the mist I could make out faint letters forming, like a finger dragging through condensation. Get out. Then, a loud knock. Not from the door. From inside the closet. I needed air. Needed to get away from that room, from whatever the hell was inside it. My heart was still pounding as I stepped into the first-class swimming pool area. The ship's eerie silence only amplified the sound of my own footsteps against the cold tile floor. The pool had been drained decades ago, but the stories remained. People swore they had seen a little girl in a blue dress playing near the water's edge. A girl who wasn't supposed to be there. I leaned against the railing, peering into the deep, empty basin. My breath slowed. Maybe I'd let my imagination run wild. Maybe. Plop. The sound of water. I stiffened. Another plop. Like small feet kicking at the surface. But the pool was empty. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. Hello. My voice echoed, unnatural in the stillness. Silence. Then, a single, wet footprint appeared on the dry tile. My stomach clenched. Another footprint followed. And another. They were coming toward me. A child's giggle echoed through the chamber. Light. Playful. But something about it made my skin crawl. I stumbled back, my breath quickening. Then, cold. Soaking cold. Something was wrapped around my wrist. A tiny, freezing hand. I yanked my arm back with a gasp. The grip was gone. But when I looked down, my wrist was dripping wet. I stumbled out of the pool area, my heart still hammering in my chest. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as if the ship itself were alive, watching. I needed to get out. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady my nerves, and made my way toward the lobby. But as soon as I stepped inside, a strange sense of dread washed over me again. The lobby was quiet, too quiet. The lights above flickered softly, casting long shadows across the floor. The air was thick, damp, like the ship was breathing in time with my own anxious breaths. And then I saw her. A tall woman, dressed in an elegant white gown, standing near the grand piano. Her back was straight, her hands folded in front of her. I froze. She wasn't just a guest. She felt wrong. Like she wasn't supposed to be here. Like she was a part of the ship itself. I couldn't look away. Something about her eyes, void of any expression but cold, calculating, made my skin crawl. Then her lips moved. No sound came from them at first, but I could read her words as clearly as if she had spoken them aloud. "Leave now." I blinked and she was gone. I took a step forward, unsure if I was hallucinating. But the piano played, soft, mournful notes as if on its own. I turned, rushing toward the exit. But when I looked back, the piano was silent. The woman was gone. And the shadows that seemed to linger at the edges of the room felt even darker. I stumbled back toward Room B340, my mind racing. The woman in white, the drowning girl in the pool, everything was unraveling around me. But the real terror, I knew, still awaited me in that cursed room. I couldn't bring myself to turn the door handle at first. My hand trembled, frozen in place as I stared at the brass knob. I tried to shake the fear out of my head, telling myself that this was all just in my mind. But as I entered the room, the air thickened. The temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. I felt a heavy weight settle in the pit of my stomach, the kind of discomfort that only comes when something truly malevolent is nearby. I tried to ignore the oppressive atmosphere as I threw myself onto the bed, hoping to get some sleep and forget the horrors of the night. But sleep didn't come. Instead, I woke up to the sensation of being smothered. A crushing weight pressed down on my chest, suffocating me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My eyes darted around the dark room, searching for the source of the oppressive pressure. Then I felt it, cold fingers brushing my face. My heart hammered in my chest, the panic rising. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped, as if the very air had turned against me. A whisper came from the darkness, a voice so close I could feel its breath on my skin. "Let me in." The words were more than a whisper. They felt like a command, a curse meant to break me. I struggled against the invisible force holding me down, pushing with every ounce of strength I had, but I couldn't move. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room, and I saw it. A figure, upside down, crawling down from the ceiling. Its limbs twisted unnaturally as it contorted toward me. Its mouth stretched open, impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight. But my body betrayed me, paralyzed in sheer terror. And then, everything went black. I don't know how long I was out. It could have been minutes or hours, but when I regained consciousness, I found myself sprawled on the cold floor, my body aching from the pressure of the night. The room was pitch black, and the smell of mildew and salt water was thick in the air. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, but I couldn't remember how I'd fallen. My vision blurred as I tried to orient myself, but all I could hear was the eerie silence and the faint, distant creak of the ship. Something moved in the dark. I froze, trying to listen, my breath coming in short gasps. A shuffling sound, barely audible but unmistakable, echoed through the pitch-black room. My senses screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead, frozen to the spot. Then a loud bang. Something had hit the floor. A door? No. There was nothing in this room except shadows. I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, heavy and cold. My fingers curled around it, and I swung it through the darkness, hoping to strike whatever was lurking out of sight. A scream split the silence. The force of my swing connected with something solid, something real, but the impact was met with a sickening crunch. I staggered back, my pulse hammering in my throat. I couldn't see, but I could feel it, the heavy presence of something close. Something looming just beyond the reach of the lamp's dim glow. I wasn't alone. A cold breath, a harsh rasping sound filled the room. I swung again, hearing the scrape of wood against the floor, But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to make it stop. The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, growing in size as though they were alive, stretching toward me, eager to claim me. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, as though the walls were closing in. The darkness moved around me, swirling, and I heard the faintest of whispers, a voice I didn't recognize, deep and guttural. "Run while you still can." I bolted, desperate to escape the room, but my footsteps felt heavy. Each step was a struggle, as if the very floor was pulling at me, slowing me down. I stumbled into the hallway, my breath ragged in my chest. But the hallway, it didn't end. It stretched on, an endless maze of darkness. Every direction looked the same. There were no doors, no windows, no escape. I tried to scream for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the ship. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt the hot surge of panic rising. Was I trapped on this godforsaken vessel? Would I ever escape? The walls seemed to close in on me. I turned around, expecting to see the safety of the room I'd fled from, but instead, I found myself staring at a never-ending stretch of the same hallway. It was as if the ship had become a labyrinth, a maze that kept shifting, rearranging itself, trapping me inside. And then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. Slow, steady, closing in. I turned, but there was nothing. Just the emptiness of the corridor stretching endlessly ahead. "No, no, no," I muttered under my breath, my legs shaking as I tried to run again. But the faster I ran, the further the hallway seemed to stretch. The ship was alive, and it wasn't going to let me leave. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Every footstep echoed down the never-ending corridor, each sound growing louder as I sprinted through the suffocating dark. But no matter how fast I ran, the hallway seemed to stretch infinitely, like the ship itself had become some kind of twisted living entity, intent on keeping me inside. I turned a corner, hoping to find something, anything, different, but it was the same. Same flickering lights. Same haunting silence. And the walls, they seemed to be shifting, slowly, like they were moving, pulsing. The air grew thicker. The pressure was building, making it harder to breathe. Every time I looked behind me, the shadows stretched longer, closer, and the footsteps, they grew louder. Was I hallucinating? Or was this ship truly alive, its haunted past consuming everything it touched? I reached what I hoped was the lobby, at least that's what I thought it was supposed to be. But it didn't feel right. The familiar wooden panels and plush furniture were all in place, but there was no receptionist. The front desk was abandoned, and the chandeliers overhead swayed slightly, as if moved by an invisible force. The lights flickered again, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The walls, once solid and immovable, were now distorted, stretching and bending as if they were made of wax. The large windows that should have looked out onto the ocean were now black, reflecting nothing but the dark void. And outside, I could hear the faintest whisper of the sea. Or was it something else? A voice, soft, raspy, whispered behind me. "You were never meant to leave." I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. But there was no one there. The voice continued, distant and chilling, "You belong to the ship now." A sudden coldness filled the room. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. My mind raced. Was I losing it? Or was this some kind of twisted game the ship was playing with me? The shadows in the corners of the room began to shift, becoming more solid, more distinct. I could see them now, figures moving, watching. They were everywhere. Their forms barely visible but enough to make my skin crawl. I wasn't alone. I felt the room getting smaller, the walls closing in, and I knew I was no longer on a ship. I was trapped in some kind of purgatory, caught between life and death, between the living and the dead. Suddenly the shadows surged forward. They didn't have human form. They were mass, swirling darkness with twisted, contorted shapes that seemed to devour the light. As they came closer, I felt the weight of them, the suffocating cold, the ancient sorrow embedded in their essence. The whispers grew louder. A cacophony of voices, some pleading, others angry, others just lost. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat, choking me. I backed away, desperate to escape. But every direction I turned, I found myself surrounded. The figures crept closer, their chilling presence pressing in on me, suffocating me. I couldn't escape them. The ship had me. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Tall, cloaked. The air around it was heavier, colder. It moved with an unnatural grace, its presence far more terrifying than the shadows surrounding me. The warden. I could feel it. This was the one who controlled the ship, the one who trapped everyone who stepped aboard. His hollow, empty eyes locked onto mine as he slowly raised a hand, pointing at me. "You belong here now," he said, his voice echoing in my skull. The words reverberated, vibrating through my bones. I tried to back away, but the shadows, no, the ship, would not let me. The walls closed in further, and I realized the ship was consuming me whole. I was being swallowed, my body becoming a part of it. The darkness was alive, pulsing with malevolent intent. I could feel myself slipping, being pulled toward the void that waited ahead. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't escape. And I knew, deep down, that the ship would never let me leave. It had claimed me. I was its prisoner now. The silence was suffocating, thicker than the shadows closing in around me. I could feel the weight of the ship pressing down on me, every breath harder to take. The air was damp and cold, like it had been frozen in time. My chest tightened and my head throbbed, spinning with the realization that the ship wasn't just haunted. It was the haunt. The walls, the shadows, the spirits, they were all part of it. And I was just another lost soul trapped in its grip. As I stumbled forward, still reeling from the darkness, I saw her. The little girl. The one who had been haunting the pool area, the one I had been running from. She stood in front of me, her eyes hollow, lifeless, yet full of sorrow. Her hair was matted, clinging to her pale face, and her tattered dress hung loosely around her frail frame. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was a silent scream, echoing through the walls of the ship. "You can leave," her voice whispered, barely audible, like the wind carrying a distant cry. "But someone else must stay." Her words sank into me, dragging me deeper into the nightmare. I could feel the pull of the ship, the undeniable need to take someone, anyone, to fill the void. The weight of the decision pressed on my chest, suffocating me. The shadows around me thickened. They reached out, stretching like long fingers trying to grasp me. The ship wanted me. It needed me to stay. But there was a price I had to pay to escape. Behind me, a dark figure loomed. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was him, the warden. The figure of authority, the one who controlled everything, who had been watching me, waiting for me to make my choice. His hollow eyes bore into my back, a reminder that there was no escape unless I gave in, unless I offered something. Someone. "You can leave," the little girl repeated, "but not without giving up someone." I felt the ship's grip tightening around me, pulling at my soul. My skin prickled, the chill of the air biting at my flesh. I looked at her, and then at the warden, his dark silhouette standing behind me. I understood what was at stake. The ship wouldn't let me go without a sacrifice. It needed someone to replace me to keep the cycle going. My breath caught in my throat as I saw a new figure appear behind the little girl. A person, someone who looked vaguely familiar. A guest? Someone from the hotel? I couldn't be sure. The figure's face was a blur, but I knew. I felt it. This was the one who would take my place if I chose wrong. They would become the next lost soul, trapped in this haunted hell forever. The ship waited. The shadows pressed closer. I could feel them crawling up my legs, my arms. Their cold, invisible hands pulling at me. My body screamed in protest, my mind racing for a way out. But there was none. I knew what I had to do. The sacrifice was unavoidable. I looked at the figure, my heart pounding in my chest. The choice was mine. I could leave, escape the nightmare. But someone else would have to stay behind. The little girl's hollow eyes stared up at me. Choose. The warden stood silent, his cold presence looming in the dark. I looked at the figure behind her once more, feeling the weight of my decision press down on me like 1,000 tons. There was no way out. Not for me. I stepped forward. "I choose," I whispered, feeling the ship's grip tighten around my soul. Suddenly, everything stopped. The shadows recoiled. The ship groaned as if it were alive, its hunger momentarily sated. The little girl smiled, her eyes still empty, her grin wide and unsettling. "Thank you," she whispered. The warden nodded. His form shifted into a black mist, disappearing into the darkness. And I was free. But even as the ship's grip released me, I knew that the price had been paid. The sacrifice had been made. The ship would take another and the cycle would continue. I had escaped, but at what cost? The ship would never stop haunting. It would never stop claiming. And someone would always be left behind. I ran. I woke up, gasping for air, heart racing. My body felt heavy as if I had been dragged through hell and back. I was no longer on the ship, but I could still feel the presence of it, like a shadow that refused to leave. The morning sun filtered through the cracks of the car windows, and I blinked, disoriented, trying to piece together what had happened. The Queen Mary loomed in the distance, docked in the harbor, silent and lifeless. The giant ship that had once been a place of luxury, a floating hotel, now seemed like a graveyard. It didn't look alive. It looked waiting. I wiped my forehead, feeling the sweat and the coldness of fear on my skin. It didn't feel real. How had I gotten here? I checked my phone, hoping for some sign of clarity. My hands shook as I scrolled through the photos I had taken the night before. The Queen Mary. Room B340. The pool. The hallways. The shadows. Everything. I froze. There was a new video in my gallery, one I didn't remember taking. I pressed play, dread coiling in my stomach as the familiar view of Room B340 appeared on the screen. The bed, the furniture, the same shadows in the corners of the room. But then, my breath hitched. There I was, asleep in the bed. But I wasn't alone. A dark figure stood at the foot of the bed, motionless. It was hard to make out at first, but as the camera zoomed in, I could see the details. The figure was tall, cloaked in darkness, its face obscured. But then, its head shifted, moving unnaturally. It was looking at me, watching me. I could hear my own breathing on the video, slow and steady. But then, just as I was about to reach out and stop the playback, the figure in the room started to move. It didn't walk. It glided, floating, coming closer to the camera. Then, the most chilling part of the video came. The figure leaned down and whispered into my ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the terror growing inside me, as though the figure was speaking directly into my soul. And then, in the reflection of the bathroom mirror, something even worse happened. My eyes were missing. My own reflection was gone. It was a hollow version of me. A broken thing staring back, devoid of any life. I dropped the phone, a cold sweat breaking out over my skin. It wasn't over. It wasn't supposed to be over. The Queen Mary had let me go, but at what cost? I had made the choice to leave, but the ship wasn't done with me. It hadn't released me. It had let me go to torment me. The echo of the little girl's voice, the whispers of the warden, and the sound of the ship's creaking alive again filled my ears. The haunt wasn't over. Suddenly the ground beneath me seemed to shift. I could feel the vibrations, the gentle hum of the ocean's currents, the same vibrations that had once lulled the ship's passengers into a false sense of safety. The Queen Mary was alive again, moving beneath me, ready to claim the next soul. The price had been paid, but the curse would never leave me. I couldn't escape. It was always there, lurking, waiting for me to make a mistake. That night, as I lay in my bed trying to shut my eyes, I heard it. The sound of a ship's horn. At exactly 3:33 a.m., it echoed through the silence of the room, distant but unmistakable. A call from the deep, an eternal reminder. I sat up, heart pounding, my body frozen with terror. I could hear it again. The sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate. It came from the hallway. But it wasn't the footsteps of a living person. It was something else, something that had never left. I reached for my phone, but before I could unlock it, I saw it in the reflection of the dark window. My own face, staring back at me. But I wasn't alone. There was something behind me, waiting. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its cold presence. And then, in the mirror, just for a second, I saw myself again. But this time, I was still on the Queen Mary, waiting for the ship to come for me again. And this time, I wouldn't be able to run. Some passengers never leave. At 3:33 a.m. I could hear it. the distant ship horn, the sound that haunts every fiber of my being. I checked the mirror, and there I was. But I wasn't alone. My reflection was still on the Queen Mary, waiting for me to come back. And I knew I would.